Guys, sorry this video was going to be up a little bit earlier, but I just got back from a job in Saskatchewan. Relatively uneventful overall, unless you can hear the wind outside. But yeah, relatively uneventful overall. Yeah, only exciting part was it ended up needing a shotgun and a log splitter. So, alright, so to recap, because some people wanted to know what happened. First off, we'll start with Charles, because you wanted to know what happened, how I got smacked in the face with a 2x4 and the like. Let's just say that some people don't realize that their family members are zombies, and yeah, it devolved a little bit until the family members started trying to bite the lady who smacked me in the face with a piece of 2x4 about this big. So yeah, so I have to clarify, I'm not dead. I died. Basically, I stayed dead long enough for them to actually officially say I was officially dead. This is actually, believe it or not new to me. When I was a kid, I had a blood disease that I can never remember the frickin' name for it, but it goes by ITP, and it's basically a platelet thing. And according to my dad, they had some issues with me, and they had to try a couple of experimental things, or brand new. I don't know if they're experimental. Probably weren't experimental. They were probably just brand new treatments. And it stopped my heart a couple of times when I was a baby. So I've actually been declared officially dead now 3 times. So yeah, that's all that. But no, I'm alive. I got a pulse and everything. If thou dost prick me, do I not bleed? You know, all that shit. If you smack me in the face, you know, do I not end up with marks on my nose? Yes. If I, cut myself with a saw, do I not end up with a funky ass cut on my finger? Another one. Anyways, so yeah. Anyways, we're gonna call him George. I'm not gonna say his last name is Dubois. But anyways, he had come in to recruit me and, told me I was dead and all that stuff. The next morning, dramatic fucker, right? He comes in the middle of the night and tells me I'm dead and he's got a job for me. Anyways, the next morning he shows up and, he gives me a cup of coffee, which I might as well have a sip of mine right now. It's the 3rd cup of the day. I'm shaking, so it's decaf this time. And my little cat's just waddling off over there. Hi, sweetheart. Mwah. Cool. Anyways, shows up with a cup of coffee and basically, like, a binder full of shit. And, yeah. So, he sat down and he tells me that there's a department for the federal government. Of course, there's always a department. Though, apparently, to my American viewers, you guys handle it a little bit differently. You guys have, one department that kind of tries to make all this shit disappear, and has to hire out to people to do the actual wet work and stuff. Now, I will flat out tell you, I haven't killed anyone. Flat out tell you. Alive. Pretty good. Timmy's decaf. I know to some people that's just muddy water, but sometimes I just want the flavor of coffee, and a little extra caffeine will make me vibrate, so I look like I'm dead or something. Anyways, so yeah, he hands me this folder and tells me that Department H is basically, and it's not for hauntings or anything like that, it's just apparently the departments get letters. I don't know, Site X was something like a training base for the OSS or something like that. And I guess this weird shit-o-meter kind of continued. Anyways, basically the department's been around since just after Confederation. And I guess it was one of the reasons for Confederation or some shit like that. I don't know. When you're reading the history of a department that doesn't exist, it's dry, for one thing, and it's basically like just background. It's like a paragraph and a half of we've existed since this. This is what we'd like you to do. This is your responsibilities. But basically what they did was they set up a little job for me. I was getting paid like a regular salary. It wasn't bad, actually. It was $55,000 a year. Travel was covered, all of that stuff. They give you like an option of what you want, and like PI is one of them. And I thought that'd be kind of cool. But you actually have to do like cover work and stuff like that. And to do cover work for as a PI, you need to have your PI's license. Da 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 da. Strange fact. PIs in Canada can't actually get a concealed carry license. So a lot of people ask me, why don't you just use a gun? That's the thing. Like, very few people are permitted to carry open at all. And concealed, you know, you need a special license, and usually you have to be a PI or an active member of the military and stuff like that. And apparently that draws attention. You know, like a PI traveling across Canada to do stuff draws attention, especially if you have to go into like Quebec or anything like that, because they have their own set of laws, and so you have to go in a different registry, and it's higher profile basically. So what they did for me, because I've been a landscaper off and on for like a decade and a bit now. I built Yager Ridge, which is a golf course not that far from me. I've worked on a whole bunch of different golf courses. I've been the foreman of a landscaping company. So it was easier to be like a landscaper. Plus, this is the nut job with the machete part, you can carry around tools that, you know, you'd only be able to carry around as a crazy person. You could be a carpenter, you know, have hammers and stuff like that. But again, carpentry skills I'm okay, but not great. So, you know, this gave me access to machetes, axes, hammers, you know, because people sometimes want you to fix something when you're there. It gave me access to some things you need to use afterwards. Canvas tarps, wood chippers, lye, you know, that kind of thing. Plus, you know, you can carry a little more esoteric stuff that people, you know, don't really think is weird if you're a landscaper. Like, landscapers, you know, we wear masks and stuff like that, because if we're sawing down a tree with a chainsaw or something, there's going to be stuff. Or, you know, if we're working with pesticides or so on and so forth. Plus, then you can carry containers of chemicals that are marked as pesticides, but they might be something like, in one case I had to have blessed oil, holy water, what the fuck was that third thing, worm root. They were all mixed together. It looked and stank like Roundup. Roundup kind of has this weird, almost like gone off coffee mixed with insecticide sort of smell, and it stank like that. So, but yeah, it gave me the opportunity to do stuff. So that was kind of how they set me up. There's a lot of background information that I have now I didn't have at the beginning, which would have been really handy. So if you guys want to know some of the other stuff, like different types and classifications, now I focus only on whatever you want to call them, zombies, right? I focus only on them. But there is a gambit of stuff that H takes care of, and occasionally, you know, shit will cross over. So, you know, I've worked from Blueberry River in BC, Northwest Territories, Yellowknife, Fort Smith, Oulahook, all of that stuff, all the way to the East Coast. Coasties usually have less of this stuff. Apparently they deal with it themselves a lot. So if something comes shambling out of the ocean, it doesn't look quite right. Apparently the coasties just usually take care of it themselves. Apparently up north in the Yukon and stuff like that, that's where the Dead Man's Toe shit came from. So they tend to deal with their stuff too. But yeah, you know. Anyways. So yeah, like there's a lot of classifications and stuff like that that I can cover with you guys. But why did I do this and then get into the channel is probably, you know, part of it. I mean, as you can tell, this is actually a gift from Nikki. for archery targets, because when you're just starting out in the game, you don't really know what works or anything like that. So what I started was, I had originally just started the YouTube channel so I could subscribe to other guys and kind of learn what they had done. That just kind of evolved into then me trying things out myself. Now you notice my first few reviews were really just like knives and stuff like that, and knives can work. I don't recommend them because typically the dead don't bleed. If you cut a zombie with flesh, they don't really bleed or anything like that. The typical rules really are destroy the brain, take off the head, burn the body, destroy it. But like I said, with different classifications, different shit works. Some of it is really simple. Haitian zombies, for instance, with voodoo, and where their souls sort of are stitched in, you can actually just use a pocket knife and cut the stitching, and usually it's a duppy in a soul, but it can escape and then drops, right? So a pocket knife does work then, and actually that Ontario Knife Company, what was it? Oh my god, it was my first knife. I still have it. They worked really great for cutting the twine, and it was usually jute twine or cotton thread, and that just worked great for that. So yeah. But yeah, I was starting out, I didn't really know what the fuck was working and everything, and so then you get into some of the stuff where people have been telling me, because you'll find notes and stuff like that. Like, I actually keep notepads of encode, sort of encode, like tree was stubborn, needed special axe, treated afterwards with solution C, that kind of stuff, and then you've got another notebook that tells you what solution C is, and that's the holy oil, holy water, and wormwort. But there were notes from other people, and sometimes they were in French, but like really colloquial French, like je parle français. And I've got a little bit of an accent, like a little bit of a Quebecois accent when I speak it, because that's who I learned it from. Je parle acadien, which is just kind of like a Quebec French mixed with English and some First Nations languages and stuff like that. You usually hear it out on the East Coast, Nova Scotia and stuff like that. I speak English, I can read all of those. I speak a few other languages, little bits here and there, and I can kind of translate some using French and stuff. But I mean, when you're reading like really colloquial French, or one was written all in Latinized Iroquois, which was very interesting because I don't speak a word of Iroquois. I speak I've got a couple of words in Iroquois, Ojibwe, Cree, da. But usually that required me asking someone to help me translate, and like, people don't necessarily have to be read in. If you tell them, you found your crazy uncle's notebook and you'd like to get it translated and shit like that. Anyways, I started going on, like people were saying, use clubs, destroy the brain, da. Basic, simple rules. But I also then became a Patreon producer on Zombie Go Boom. And while that doesn't really sound like you're giving them money so you get your name on the screen, not once did my name actually appear correctly. It wasn't Chuck's fault. Trust me, it wasn't Chuck's fault. But I actually, I talked to Chuck now and everything like that, and their stuff that they were testing out, I don't know if they were on the American side, if they're hunters, mercs, whatever you want to call them, but all the shit that they were going on was based upon, break the brain, crack the head, take off the head, that kind of stuff. And like I said, those are essentially the basic rules. If you Asian voodoo zombie's head off, it still lives. You do have to do this, otherwise, yeah. By the way, I haven't been to Haiti. I only operate in Canada. But actually, not that far from here, Holyrood, we have a very strong Haitian community, and I got a call from my friend Pascal one day, and so I had to go down there. But yeah. kind of babbling, but I mean, how do I explain to you guys why I did certain things? Okay, well, became a producer on ZGB to learn from them, and there's a lot of stuff that they do that works, right? Almost all of their actual practical shit works. That the Executioner is a beautiful, beautiful, big ass, sword. Not a machete, hard for me to take around, all that fun stuff, like it's hard enough for me to justify to my customers. And yeah, I do actually have customers. Like I said, they set me up with a job where you have to actually do the work. It's really hard for me to justify to my customers when they're like, what are you going to use to prune the hedges? And you whip out the Executioner. It's a little bit easier when you just use like a barong or something like that. They can actually understand that. Especially when you see me trimming hedges with the barong. It's kind of beautiful and weird at the same time. And I've learned to keep my fingers out of the way. But yeah, so after watching ZGB and having started the channel with the first little bit, you can see that the rest of the stuff kind of got a little bit more into, what would do the job. I never actually said, we'll kill a human or anything like that in any of the videos. And often I was telling you guys, make sure you're safe, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's why, like, never had to use these on people. People's a very broad term. After a while in this gig, you kind of get confused on what words you should use. Double dead. Afterwards, undead, I don't like using that. Zombies, sure, I'm calling this kind of as great except for the zombies, but like I said, there's a huge classification. If you want to know, just comment down below and I'll do like the next one. I'll walk you guys through some of the classifications and some of the stuff you have to do. But yeah, my first job was actually way back in 2008 in Ontario, and that one was one of the weirdest ones, because there was no real reason for it. It was kind of spontaneous. Tiny ass town in the middle of Ontario. The outbreak was relatively isolated. I get there and there's OPP pretty much blocking off two towns, and I'm trying to communicate with them. Everyone's speaking French, by the way, and I don't know if you've been to Ontario. OPP usually speak French. The Sûreté de Québec obviously speak French, but sometimes they also speak English. But to find every single OPP officer speaking in French was really weird. So I started talking to them and asking them what was going on, and none of them would respond in English, and in fact they told me to start talking in French. So I started talking in French and eventually found out what was happening. Unfortunately, it wasn't a situation where I could actually do anything. You kind of had to let the fever run its course. It was a very trippy first experience. Yeah, basically the towns kind of ended up not existing anymore. No, they didn't really nuke them or anything like that, but the population decreased quite a bit. Two towns consolidated into one, and yeah, and some of the survivors hid like in the basement of a church. Which is not a bad place to hide, especially these guys. They actually had a radio station down there, so it was kind of cool. They could communicate. But yeah, when everything was done, OPP pretty much cleaned up. RCMP, OPP, a couple of guys that I'm fairly certain were probably from H. But yeah. Kind of a hard first job when there's nothing that I can do. It was not something that was in any of the books. It's written down now. I do have to submit reports and stuff like that. One, so I can keep getting paid, but also so that anyone who comes after me, they can actually know. Now, why me? is a question that you guys are probably asking. Why the hell just random dude? It was that dying thing, apparently. The wound on my leg from the bear. The bear was double dead at the end. It was like... One of the classifications is biological, obviously. This thing had kind of a variation on rabies. And that the thought where it was like missing fur and stuff like that, that was apparently part of it. One of the symptoms was mange-like symptoms. Aggression, the rot, its interior had rotted. It was basically like eating itself alive, like it had a parasite inside of it. And the parasite was like just kind of going and going and going and trying to pass itself on. But apparently the parasite in this case lived in the heart, and it needed to draw in sustenance. The thing's trachea was like rotten, so I don't even know how the hell, like, if it had like a little proboscis or something like that, or if like whatever it was, it when it pierced the heart, it died. The parasite died. But that thing had been rooting around in corpses and stuff like that for so long, just trying to feed itself. Like, the elder had actually found, he submitted a report. George passed it on to me. Like I said, I never got to see the elder again, but I did finally get to read his words. But the elder had walked around the next couple of weeks afterwards and found carcasses that were right near there, and they had been like ripped apart, and just the insides had been eaten, like the blood-rich organs and stuff like that. All the hearts were gone, but that was it. And the meat had been left. And normally you'd get scavengers like coyotes. Mountain lions are not above scavenging. You would get crows, carrion eaters, stuff like that. Even, you know, people, if the meat is good enough and they're starving, will cut off a hunk, take a leg, something like that. But no, nothing to touch these. The eyeballs had shriveled. Crows, magpies, woodpeckers, I've seen them eat eyes. This thing, no. The eyes had like shriveled up and dried up. The meat was like desiccated, kind of. Anyways, so the claws that it had scratched me on my leg with was infected with whatever the fuck this was. And yeah, I guess they kind of figured that after a bunch of fucking tests, some of the biological shit isn't going to work on me. I'm not sure if I'm really, really happy with that, because that means that there's probably some shit that will work on me. But 90% of what I deal with is biological, so, well, biological based. Yeah. Like I said, so many classifications. Just let me know if you want to know. The video for that's going to be like 40 minutes long and probably dry. Maybe I'll put up a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. Oh, and before you guys ask, why the fuck am I allowed to tell you about this shit now? 10-year contract. Basically, 2008 to 2018. I renewed my contract for another 2 years. Pay was good. So I'm kind of off that contract, but now I'm at a point where, for one, nobody's going to believe this. So, fuck that anyways. But I can actually share this stuff, and H operates different than the American department. All your fun horror movies and shit like that, especially some of the really bad ones, but have like a cult following, but, you know, like, are just playing some dude who got an axe to the head but still lives and all that stuff, or, you know, Revenants, Forces of Nature, all those guys. Usually stories have an origin. Legends have some truth to them, stuff like that. So apparently that's their way of dealing with it. Our way is slightly different. That hairy guy you see in Radium, when you just cross into Radium at the entrance, the Southern Highway coming in. The really, really hairy guy, but he's, got his hair really shortly cropped and he's got that huge neck beard. Yeah, he might be not human. I'm just saying. Das ist ein wilder Mann, ja? Mein Deutsch ist schlecht, I already said that. But yeah, anyways, some nut job goes on YouTube and tells all about this. Nobody's gonna fucking believe him anyways. So why would the government end his contract? So, but yeah, that's, I guess, pretty much all I can share this time. I know you guys are gonna have questions. So as we continue, I'll tell you. I'll try to answer your questions, basically. Charles, I know you're going to have some. I know Tenchi's going to have some. Rob probably too. Just ask them down below, and I'll try to answer them as we go on. As you guys ask more questions, I'll try and answer them. I'm going to try and keep these videos relatively short, so we might do part 1 and part 2 for like the different classifications and stuff like that. But yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening to me rambling, and don't let what I'm saying scare you off visiting Canada, because it is great except for the zombies. So, bye guys.